When I was younger, I loved riding elevators, and I got to push the buttons. I didn't really need to go to each and every floor. The ride itself was fun. Just like relationships, at least in the beginning. The ride to the top can be fun and full of new discoveries, but the ride down tends to not be as much fun. This elevator analogy of how interpersonal relationships develop was presented by Steven and Susan Beebe of Texas State University and Mark Redmond at Iowa State University. Published in 1996 in the first edition of their Interpersonal Communication Relating to Others textbook, the elevator model has been included in every edition since. This video will start with a very brief refresher of the basic principles and assumptions of stages models of relational development. Very brief because my assumption is that you are already aware of them. Then we'll go through each stage in Beebe, and Redmond's elevator model. As it'll probably get awkward to keep saying all three names all the time, I'll shorten the authors' names at times to just their initials, BB and R. Another assumption I'm making is that you have at least a basic understanding of Mark Knapp's staircase model, the model that preceded the development of the elevator model. While the developers opted for an elevator metaphor rather than the staircase used by Knapp, the basic concept remains the same. You get off on a floor, and if you like what you see, you stay, or get back on the elevator to go up to the next floor. If, however, you aren't satisfied with what you see, you'll walk over to the down elevator to get off that floor. Once you start going up the elevator, there's no guarantee you will go all the way up, nor is it certain that, once you enter the down elevator, you will go all the way to the bottom. While there are many similarities between the staircase and elevator models, there are also some significant differences. Some of the names of the stages have changed, and there are some new stages. And some of the stages are moved around, particularly in the de-escalation phase, but you'll likely recognize some common trends. As in Knapp's model, the elevator model has 10 stages across 2 phases, 5 in the going up, or escalation phase, and 5 in the going down, or de-escalation phase. The top floor of this model is intimacy. You are moving up, or the relationship is escalating toward intimacy, or moving down, or the relationship is de-escalating away from intimacy. Intimacy is not necessarily sex. You can be intimate with your best friends or even business partners without having sex. Instead, think of intimacy as the closest your relationship could possibly be. While in this image of elevator buttons, the floors are numbered from 0, the ground floors of pre-interaction awareness and post-separation effects, to the 4th floors, the top floors of intimacy and turmoil stagnation. The original model doesn't number the floors. Most of our relationships tend to start on the bottom floors, or at the bottom of the list, on the up side of the elevator, so this is where we'll start. You are escalating your relationship up toward intimacy. As we go through these escalation stages, you'll notice that some of the stages are essentially identical to Knapp's coming together version. The bottom floor is pre-interaction awareness, and this is where we see the first difference from Knapp's model. This is when you notice someone, but haven't interacted with them, verbally or non-verbally. You use passive strategies where you pay attention to what they look like, see how they behave with others, and so on. Based on what you observe, you may decide to stay on that floor, or move up to the next stage and start talking with them directly, interacting, or forego the potential relationship altogether. BB and R say that you can skip this stage and go right to the next stage, but you'll probably spend at least some time in this stage, even if it's a nanosecond, before you move up to the next floor, the acquaintance stage, virtually identical to Knapp's initiating stage. This is your first interaction with the other person. You actually communicate with them. You tend to engage in what is called phatic communication, which is when your conversations and behaviors follow social norms rather than providing any real information. There is very little, if any, self-disclosure in this superficial type of interaction. Think of it as just going through the societal motions. The acquaintance stage is broken up into 2 sub-stages. The first, introductions, is just what it sounds like. We introduce ourselves, provide limited background information, etc. Scholars say we usually spend about 4 minutes introducing ourselves before we move on. The next sub-stage being casual banter. This is often conversations surrounding the weather, the event you're at, basic non-controversial current event topics that are easy to discuss and expected when you first meet someone socially. Assuming you want to develop the relationship further, You'll step into the elevator and make your way up to the next floor. Exploration. It's the same as Knapp's experimenting stage. Low risk self-disclosure, lots of small talk, and looking for commonalities. Again, if you like what you see, you can stay on that floor or choose to ride the elevator to the intensification stage, the same as Knapp's intensifying stage. You start spending more time together, self-disclosure becomes deeper, and you change your language from first and second person singular, I, me, you, to first person plural, we, us, our. You rely on the other person for self-confirmation. When you are with them, you feel you are a worthwhile person and your partner contributes positively to your self-esteem. Then your relationship might progress to the next stage of intimacy, which is the highest floor the elevator reaches. Again, intimacy is not synonymous with sex. Here you can talk about virtually anything. You develop your own individualized communication, inside jokes. People see you as a single social unit. You refer to each other as two peas in a pod, BFFs, or something similar. You are one. If you think this sounds a lot like Knapp's integrating stage, you're right. If you were going to identify the stages based on relationship labels, you can think of the pre-interaction awareness stage as strangers, acquaintance level as, well, acquaintances, friends when in the exploration stage, close friends when you get to the intensification stage, and best friends, lovers, or spouses when you are in the intimacy stage. There is no bonding stage, as Knapp would call it, as the elevator doesn't address the issue of formal public commitment. So we will mosey over to the down elevator, where your relationship de-escalates. BB&R identify this type of relationship as a post-intimacy one. You were once intimate, but this relationship you have after or post that intimate time is a formally intimate relationship that is maintained, but at a less intimate stage. That means that once you spend any time on the de-escalation side, even if you return to any stage on the escalation side other than intimacy, it's post-intimacy. For de-escalation, the model presumes relationships move down away from intimacy. You'll notice some significant differences between Knapp's coming apart stages and BB&R's de-escalation stages. While some of the stages are similar, they are renamed and reorganized, and at least one stage is completely new. Moving away from intimacy may begin with a blowout argument or boredom with the relationship. Two stages for the price of one in what BB&R call the turmoil or stagnation stage. That's because not every relationship goes out with a bang, and boredom is not always the beginning of the end. Either one of these, if not addressed effectively, can start your relational elevator's descent down toward the bottom floors. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines turmoil as a state or condition of extreme confusion, agitation, or commotion. This is when you find faults in your partner, real or imagined. Communication becomes difficult between the two of you. It can be a huge argument or general dissatisfaction that morphs into coercive conflict. Whatever it is, it's a tense, uncomfortable time. Stagnation, as you know from Knapp's model, although it's in a different place there, is when the relationship doesn't go anywhere. It remains in the same place. BB&R use the term relational boredom. You aren't fighting, but you're not communicating much either. You go through the motions of your relationship, rarely sharing of yourself. The relationship is not as fun or exciting as it was, or you could just be sick and tired of your partner. This type of boredom can be a destructive relational challenge. On your way up to intimacy, you went through the intensification stage. On your way down, you go through the de-intensification stage, which is similar to parts of Knapp's avoiding and circumscribing stages. You spend less time together, reducing your interactions with each other. The next floor on the way down is individualization. This is identical to Knapp's differentiating stage, albeit in a different location. On your way up, you focused on similarities. On your way down, you reestablish your individual identities. You are now two people who are different and who happen to be friends rather than a social unit. This may lead to the separation stage, where your relationship ends, terminating, to use Knapp's wording. Depending on the situation, this can be a sudden parting of the ways or an uncomfortable time of continued forced interaction. If you've ever broken off a relationship but still have to see the other person in a work, social, or academic environment, you've probably experienced this awkward time. The last stage, post-separation effects, is not included in Knapp's model. This stage acknowledges that, after the relationship ends, the individuals involved are still affected by it, and these lasting effects will influence each of them in current and future relationships. Notice that this elevator model, like the staircase model, can be applied to more than just romantic relationships, like friendships and business relationships. And not all relationships will progress to intimacy. Again, that's okay. Before we end, it's important to note that, while not explicitly identifying any stages as relational maintenance, the developers did acknowledge that healthy relationships will always experience some ebb and flow back and forth between the top two levels of each phase. While the basic assumption of stages models are the same in both Beebe and Redmond's elevator model and Knapp's staircase model, there are some significant differences between the two, especially on the relational de-escalation side. It's unrealistic to believe that our important relationships will always be at the peak of intimacy. It's normal and to be expected that we will spend some time apart reestablishing ourselves as our own person, and then come back together as a unit. But just as when I revisit a floor in a building, things are different, if only slightly, and returning to a previous relationship doesn't take you back to the same place. But that's part of what makes relationships and elevators so intriguing. At least now, when you press the button for the next floor, you'll likely have a better idea of what awaits you.